In today's history video, we'll go over the months of May and June 2018, covering some of the worst releases of that year, or so people thought. The month of May started with the second Dokkan Battlefield 2.0, introducing two new free-to-play characters. Strength % Angel Goku led the superclass type for 2 key and 70% HP attack and defense, which was pretty decent for a free-to-play card. He greatly raised his defense on Super, which was also decent, gained 30% defense per attack performed, up to 90%, and 30% attack per attack received, up to 120%. Like, on paper those buffs looked insane, but unfortunately his stats were very low, so he didn't look that impressive in game. Physical Majin Vegeta was pretty much the reverse of Goku, leading the extreme class type, greatly raising his attack on Super, and stacking defense up to 120% and attack up to 90%. And just like his Goku counterpart, his stats were also very low, so yeah, also not great. Like, honestly, those two cards were decent for free-to-play units. It's just that considering how hard they were to obtain, yeah, they should have been better. I think I never actually bought Goku, because I remember buying Vegeta to help me beat Int Ultimate Gohan's EZA at some point, and just regretting that choice almost instantly. The Battlefield also added 2 copies of LR Tech Ginyu into the Battlefield shop, so now 4 copies of this guy were obtainable. 1 from Frieza's Prime Battle event, 1 for rainbowing all of the free-to-play Ginyu Force units, and 2 from the Battlefield shop. Almost a week later, and the Dokkan survey was over. Because, yes, I forgot to mention it, but they dropped a survey during the update 3.12.0 to get players' feedbacks on the types of quality of life improvements they could make to the game.
This is a rough Google translation of this paragraph right here, but in addition, this function is scheduled in the future updates questionnaire for the implementation plan on the improvement of other functions. With regard here in detail, we will at a later date announce it in a separate announcement, which is basically what they're saying is they're going to put out a questionnaire asking us, the players, what are some other improvements we would want to have to this game. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're not thinking what I'm thinking, friend system update, please. We know that they can filter the friend system even in the most basic of ways because of the LR Goku, LR Frieza, the Super Battle Road fights, all of that. We know that they can filter it. You know, even if all they are going to give us is a specific set of units, right? It's usually about 10 pages, and that's about what you get. If somehow they can just filter that to show us what we want to see up top every single time, that is even a big enough improvement for me. I would want more out of it, right? I'd want to be able to like tell it, I just want to see extreme AGL units, and it just literally, as soon as I click on a thing to go into search for a friend, it just pulls up extreme AGL or whatever. But this is big news, guys. Like, that is awesome. Now, I don't want to overhype it too much, just because I don't want to sit here and say this and it be something that we don't ever, you know, we see but then we don't get for months upon months upon months. But it is absolutely a step in the right direction, seeing them do this. So let's go over here, let's take a look at it.
It gave 3 Dragon Stones, which was surprising. Like, if Toshi was still in charge, there was just no way they would even have given like any stones at all for that survey, for sure. Like, just ain't no way. They also held some missions beforehand, so I guess celebrate that survey. At the same time, they also dropped the login bonus rewards for the upcoming Gohan, Goku, and Goten Days celebration. Some actually pretty good rewards. Like, that's almost enough stones to do a multi. The next day, and it was time for said celebration. It was also Gohan's day. The celebration wasn't anything crazy, but still pretty good. It came with a new EZA, the return of the family Kamehameha banner, and the return of the Book of War. But this time, that item was given out for free. Instead of it being a premium item, you had to buy with real money. You could exchange those Book of Wars for copies of the family Kamehameha units. The best choice was for sure Strength Goten, as you'll see. When you got them on Global, I just picked 3 copies of Goten. Like, he was just that much better. So as for the new EZA, you needed the Extreme AGL or Tech Movie Bosses category units. So it was very easy if you had Turles. But if you didn't, then this could get pretty difficult. And it's not because the EZA was hard, it's just that most people didn't have that many movie bosses units and didn't summon for them. And unlike Frieza's EZA, the Extreme Mono AGL type wasn't as good as the Mono Super Strength team. Sure, you could still brute force the EZA with it, but you didn't have as many options as you had on the Mono Strength team. So yeah, personally, I wasn't able to finish that EZA until I got myself a copy of AGL Turles. I would have probably been able to do it without him, but in my opinion, it just wasn't worth the struggle. The family Kamehameha units were good, but unfortunately not on the same level as Dokkan Fest Easy is. Ageless Percent Gohan had an honestly not so bad leader skill if you are a new player, because if you think about it, you only needed to beat the first 20 stages of his Easy to be able to Easy him to step 5 and get his Easy leader skill. And the guy was also given out for free, thanks to the Book of War item. So yeah, it was genuinely okay. As for the rest of his kit, he raised his attack by 30% for one turn on Super, and had an additional 90% attack and 40% defense when performing a Super attack. So actually it didn't change his attack buff post Easy, it just gave him an additional 40% defense, but obviously with the SF15 Supreme Damage Multiplier and easiest stats, he was hitting harder. But unfortunately he got the short end of the stick here, probably because he was the best one of the 3 pre-Easy. Strength percent Goku got quite an upgrade. His leader skill wasn't as good as Gohan's, but he raised all allies attack by 25% for one turn on Super, and had 3k and 80% attack and defense when above 30% HP. Like, this was quite the upgrade compared to the original 5000 attack he had pre-Easy. So yeah, he was decent. Strength Goten was for some reason phenomenal. His leader skill was obviously worthless, but he raised his defense by 30% for 3 turns on Super, was an orb changer, and had 70% attack and defense at the start of turn. Like, the orb changing ability was just so valuable, and only got more valuable with time. But I think what really made him age better than his other family members was how good that guy could get defensively post Super, especially if you gave him additionals in the hidden potential system. Like, this guy could tank an SBR. I still remember using him whenever I could. He was just Tech Android 18, but as a hybrid Saiyan and strength. That was literally it. Like I said earlier, they brought back the family Kamehameha banner, and as you would guess, it wasn't worth the stones. Like, sure, you were guaranteed one of the family Kamehameha units for your first 3 discounted multis on the banner, but at the exception of Goten, these guys just didn't age that well, and weren't even that good on release. I still summoned though, because I had a summoning addiction, and I remember coping with the fact that I had a chance of pulling an unfeatured LR, which obviously didn't happen. Almost a week later, and they teased an upcoming story event in the news. People expected the story event to come with a new Dokkan Fest Goku, possibly a new false Super Saiyan Goku.
Y'all see what's up there? Y'all see that? Hell yeah, it's about damn time. It's about damn time.
Alright guys, so we have some surprising news. Looks like Lord Slug is going to be coming to the Japanese version of Dokkan very, very soon. So
JP has decided to hit us with the Lord Slug story event. So
we'll get a Lord Slug story event. Now this is cool.
Also, this Goku art as well is not in the game.
So we should get a new Goku, a new Lord Slug.
We're gonna get false Super Saiyan Goku.
We could be getting a false Super Saiyan Goku, guys. Now, I'm not saying that we will, I'm just saying that we could.
We are praying that we could see this, guys. That right there would be awesome.
A couple of days later, and the new story event was out with 3 new free play units and 2 new summonable ones, but none of them were a false Super Saiyan Goku, unfortunately. The new LR was LR Bardock, which I guess was pretty random, but yeah, from what I can remember, this guy was insane in SVR. His leader skill was obviously good there, then he greatly raised his attack on his 12 key, which was good, and sealed on his 18 key, which was an insane ability to have in SVR. Like, those enemy supers were deadly, so being able to seal them was huge. Then he had 70% attack and defense at the start of turn, an additional 30% attack when performing an ultra super attack, 4 key when facing 1 enemy, and an additional 60% defense when facing 2 or more enemies. So in SBR, this guy could tank. Like, he was just a pure wall of stats. His card art was also pretty sick. Like, this was an amazing card art. His SSR and TR arts were also pretty decent. But I also remember that this guy wasn't very popular. Like, he was one of the least liked LRs. And I think that it was mainly due to the fact that he just didn't look that impressive in most events. Like, the only place where he really shined was Super Brotherhood. And even there, he kind of struggled for a key, so it was kind of tough to get that 18 key super. And I also think people had like a difficult time evaluating units back then. Like, the only metric that mattered to most people was damage, like how much damage a unit could do. Like, even with SBR, like the strat that most people were using was to kill the enemy before they kill you. So believe it or not, but we used to use super type items like the Future Bulma 1 and SBR. Like, this was a top tier item at the time. Bardock also came with a summonable Slug. Physical Lord Slug was a leader for the giant form category and a sub leader for the extreme physical type. Like, he didn't have the craziest leader skill, but it was alright for a regular SSR. He then greatly lowered defense on super, had 80% attack and defense at the start of turn, and gained an additional 50% attack for 5 turns after receiving an attack. which was actually calculated separately, giving him a huge 170% attack buff. Like with his decent offensive link set, this guy could hit pretty hard. He also had a 10% chance of turning into a giant form up to 2 times within the fight, so generally not a bad card. Like, this guy was decent. Now, as for the fish play units that came with the new story event, Strength Icon Goku was alright for a fish play card. He was a mini leader for arguably the best category in the game, greatly stacked attack on super, had 40% attack at the start of turn, and an additional 3 key and 50% attack and defense when below 70% HP. The problem was that he was a fish play card with very low base stats, so he didn't look that good in game. But after a couple of stacks and below 70% HP, he could still output a respectable amount of damage. Tech Lord Slug introduced the Namekian category into the game, a category that was, as you would guess, pretty bad at the time, even worse than you could possibly imagine, because keep in mind that this was before the same name update, so you couldn't run characters of the same name on the same team, and that category was mainly just filled with Piccolo units, who were just named Piccolo. So yeah, that team sucked. Hence why Slug led it for 3 key, 70% HP, and 50% attack and defense. A pretty decent leader skill buff for an SSR, let alone a fish play unit. He then lowered defense on super, had 50% attack and defense at the start of turn, and recovered 30% HP when below 30% HP, as many times as he wanted. So I do vaguely remember that part of his passive being pretty useful at the time. Like on a fish play monotech team, the healing was actually very helpful. Int Kid Gohan was a sub-leader for the Hybrid Saiyans team, so not bad. Lowered attack on super, had 30% damage reduction at the start of turn, and gave 20% attack to all allies. Like, he was generally not a bad fish play option for SBR with his damage reduction and attack debuff on super. And since he was Int, you could just build him full dodge. Even though, yeah, potential orbs were still pretty scarce at that time, so I remember not using my orbs on fish play units unless they were very good. Now, the drop rates for these fish play cards were, from what I remember, pretty bad. I think that the drop rates were built with the Namekian category boost in mind, but they somehow didn't take into account the fact that the category was extremely limited, or maybe they did? I might be remembering things wrong here, but I'm pretty sure the category drop rates were buffed in that event. Like, the drop rate buff Namekian units gave was higher than the other events who had increased drop rates. Like, with a full team of Namekian TURs, you could get up to an additional 200% increased drop rate, which you can't really do now unless you have LRs on your team. But it could just be my memory playing tricks on me. Anyways, compared to today's standards, the rates were bad, but for the time, it wasn't anything we hadn't seen before. The rates were actually still much better than what we were used to, and arguably even decent. At the same time, they added some story event medals to the Baba Shop rotation, which nowadays is like, who cares? But at the time, trust me bro, trust me. Those medals in the Baba Shop were clutch, because this was before the portal of memory. So if you had missed like a specific event, who knew when that event was going to come back? There were times where you had to wait like months or even up to a year to be able to grind the medals you needed to awaken a specific character. So I still remember opening the Baba Shop every now and then to grab some of the story events medals, just in case I pulled a character who needed them. The next day, the game got top grossing. Like, Bardock really got top grossing. It's genuinely crazy to think that there was a time where regular yellow coins LRs were getting top grossing. I really miss those days. But yeah, they gave everyone 1 Elder Kai, 10 character slots, 5,000 physical potential orbs, and a Diamond Hercule statue. So no stones, unfortunately. I guess it would have been too much after the 160 stones they gave the last 2 months as top grossing rewards. 4 days later, and they teased the next Dokkan Fest. And it looked like it was going to be a new future Gohan. My favorite version of Gohan. Like, my phone background is literally one of his card art from Dragon Ball Legend. He's just my goat. They also teased the next Prime Battle event, which was going to be LR Future Trunks, from when he came back to the future to defeat the androids. Just absolute peak. A couple of days later, they released the update 3.12.2, which just added some UI improvements as well as a support for wide displays. If you're wondering what Dokkan looks like on a larger display, some guy on Reddit showcased it for us. It's a little buggy, but it still looks pretty good. I'm pretty sure even Dokkan Assets has like a series where he just shows Dokkan animations in full screen. I'll leave his playlist in the description down below. The next day, they announced in the news that they were going to increase the number of copies you could get of the LR Tech Ginyu from the Battlefield shop to 3. So all of his 5 copies were actually now obtainable. Another day later, and the new campaign was out. Not sure why it featured Kid Goku when it was clearly themed about the Future Saga arc, but whatever. It came with your typical logoed bonus rewards, missions, a new Power Medal event, a new Dokkan Fest, some return in story events, and a new EZA. The logoed bonus rewards gave a total of 31 stones for the duration of the campaign, as well as some Kais and potential orbs, but still no idea why it featured Kid Goku. The missions were also not half bad, given some pretty decent rewards, like stones, Kais, and potential orbs. As for the new Power Medal event, it didn't have increased drop rates on release, so it was bad, but I was such a Future Saga fan that this is still to this day the only Prime Battle LR that I farmed without increased drop rates. Crazy story, but I actually finished farming him at school during the Worlds 2019. My school held like a watch party there, which was actually pretty cool. Now, how good was LR featured Trunks on release? Well, from what I could remember, he was pretty good in SBR. Not that it mattered to me, but yeah, that that card art alone was enough for me to farm him. But yeah, he introduced the Future Saga category, a pretty decent category. Like it had all of your Vegito Blues, Zamasus, Gohans, and Trunkses, leading it for 3 key and 70% HP attack and defense. A pretty decent leader skill for our fish play card. He had no special effect on his 12 key, but greatly raised his attack on his 18 key. Had a flat stat buff of 25,000 attack at the start of turn, and 4 key and an additional 20,000 attack and defense when facing 2 or more enemies. So yeah, in SBR, he looked pretty good. Obviously, people didn't like the fact that he had flat stat buffs, but he had enough of them to be good, so it wasn't the end of the world. From what I remember, his link set was a bigger issue. Like, for some reason, he didn't have prepared for battle, which, if you think about it, makes no sense. Like, he was extremely prepared against the androids. He literally traveled time to prepare himself. So, yeah, make it make sense. And bro, he had, like, the messenger from the future link. Like, bro, that link was absolutely terrible before the link level update. It gave a flat stat buff of 500 attack. 500 attack, bro. 500 attack. But he was still LR Physical Trunks' best linking partner. They shared 5 links together and were a pretty nasty rotation. So, yeah, I guess it wasn't all bad. Honestly, that Trunks was just an all-around decent fish play unit. Not as good as LR Vegito Blue, but still decent. The next day, and physical future Gohan was out. He was the proper leader for the Future Saga category, leading it for 3 key, 130% HP, and 170% attack and defense. He then raised his attack and defense by 30% for 1 turn on Super, had 100% attack at the start of turn, as well as up to 100% defense, depending on the amount of HP he had, and gained 10% damage reduction at the start of every turn, up to 50%. So yeah, you can guess that this guy wasn't really appreciated on release. He was clearly a tank made for long events that weren't in the game yet. His base attack stat was also pretty low, so his numbers offensively weren't that impressive, putting even more weight into his defensive capabilities that we couldn't really utilize at the time. Like, I guess in SBR he was a wall after a couple of turns, but the fights were over by that point most of the time. Honestly, I didn't really care at the time. I just summoned for him because I liked Future Gohan as a character, and unfortunately didn't pull him. I think what disappointed me most about that card was the fact that he had 2 arms. Like, 1 arm Future Gohan is just so much cooler, but for some reason mobile games were afraid to release him with 1 arm at a time. Like, I remember even in Dragon Ball Legends, when they first dropped Future Gohan, they baited us with his card art, making us think that he was going to only have 1 arm.
Almost looking like another hybrid Saiyans mix right here. So it's going to be Future Gohan. Now, please note, Legends did it right here. Future Gohan only has 1 freaking arm. So mad props to them to getting that right on the first try.
Psych! His Dokkan event was also pretty tanky from what I remember. Like, it wasn't anything difficult, but he was just tankier than other Dokkan events.
Kind of destroyed area. That is definitely a mistake. Ooh, wow! Okay, so if you don't crit this guy, he is really reducing damage. Holy shit. I'm very impressed. Okay.
His Dokkan event was also the first one to have 2 different OSTs, if I'm not wrong. Fire OSTs, by the way. Gohan also came with 2 new Dokkan Awakenings. AGL feature Android 18 was pretty decent. She raised her defense by 30% on Super for 3 turns, had 70% attack and defense at the start of turn, changed physical key spheres to AGL at the start of turn, and int key spheres to physical key spheres when below 70% HP. So below 70% HP, she was a double orb changer, which was pretty insane. And with her defense on Super, she could actually get pretty tanky after a couple of Supers, just like her tech counterpart from the Tournament of Power. Like, she was actually decent in SBR from what I remember. Physical Android 17, not so much, since he was the offensive version of Android 18, getting attack on Super for 3 turns. Like, he was also an orb changer, but it's just that this guy couldn't really tank in SBR and didn't do much damage. So I remember not really using him unless I needed an orb changer for some reason. Now, as for Future Gohan's banner, it was pretty cracked. It featured arguably one of the best banner units of all time. Strength featured Trunks, Tech Vegito Blue, who was still the hardest hidden TR in the game, Int per Century Bardock, who still had one of the hardest hidden teams in the game, Int Future Trunks, who did age out but was extremely good in Cell EZA event, and the Future Saga androids, who were alright, so definitely not a bad banner. And a must summon if you were a Future Saga stan like me. A week later and when Tech Cell's EZA was out. One of the hardest EZA event from what I could remember. Not even close to being as hard as Agel's Percentry Goku's EZA, but probably the second hardest EZA. Like, unlike Goku's EZA, if you had all of the premium units, you could beat it fairly easily. But if you didn't, it was rough, bro. Like, you could still brute force it with like a Realm of Gods team or Potara team, but you needed a good amount of RNG to do so. So it wasn't easy. I wasn't able to beat it the first time around, nor my Future Saga or Monotai teams were strong enough to clear it. I do remember that Inzamasu being an absolute beast in that EZA though. With how tanky he was and the heal he had on Super, yeah, he was just a goat. He was just the MVP. Now, was Tech Perfect Cell any good? Well, he was probably the best EZA we had seen yet. He recovered 10% HP on Super, which was insane, especially in SBR. He gained an additional 1 key per Rainbow Key Spheres obtained, which was also pretty good, and now gained 15% attack and defense per Key Spheres obtained. Like, it was just a 3% increase, but coupled with his new SA15 immense damage multiplier and easiest stats, yeah, this guy was not only hitting pretty hard, but he was also pretty tanky with the right amount of Key Spheres. Like, stats wise, this guy was just a monster at the time, which at the same time made him very dupe reliant. Like, there was a big difference between this guy at 55% and Rainbowed. Like, a bigger gap than with the other EZAs. But his only real issue at the time was his lack of decent linking partners. Like, his best linking partners were all outdated cards, but he was just so strong that it didn't really hurt him that much at the time. His EZA banner was also not half bad. It featured Int Super Gogeta and Int Blue Vegeta, 2 units who were pretty good against his EZA, and honestly just good units in general. Almost a week later, and we got the second part of Future Gohan's campaign. It came with 2 new banners, a new story event, and another world tournament. One of the new banners was just the legendary summon banner for LR, AGL, Goten, and Trunks, so definitely not something worth summoning for. As for the actual new banner and story event, they were themed around the other world tournament and brought a bunch of new units. A cool thing about those units is that they were all buffed on JP, because yes, those units were released almost a year early on Global, so for sure they had to buff them, otherwise no one would have summoned for them. But yeah, Physicals percent Kaioken Goku had an immense damage multiplier, which was pretty insane for a regular SSR, but it came with a cost. He sacrificed 5% HP on Super, he then had 4 key and 120% attack at the start of turn, as well as an unconditional 30% chance to dodge, so he was actually pretty good, way better than his global counterpart. Like, it was night and day, which makes sense, they released almost a year apart, but global players were still bad as usual. Int Paikuhan was also not bad. He greatly lowered attack on Super, which was insane in SBR, had 100% attack at the start of turn, and debuffed enemies defense by 50%. So generally not a bad SBR card. But unlike Goku, he wasn't buffed that much from his global counterpart. Like, he just had slightly higher stats, while Goku had like a whole condition removed. He also had the Supreme Warrior Link instead of Prepared for Battle, which if you ask me was definitely a nerf. They also changed his type. He went from Strength to Int, which was I guess an interesting choice, because there was another Strength Paikuhan card that greatly lowered attack on Super, making them like a decent SBR rotation, at least on Global it was, but I guess he was just fine as an Int type too on Super Gogeta's team. And honestly, by that point, both the Strength and Int types were just so stacked that it didn't even matter what type he was. You really weren't going to run him on JP. Angel Perfect Cell stacked defense on Super, something that he couldn't do on Global, and gained 15% attack and 5% defense per Key Spheres obtained. Like, he was alright, but nothing crazy. He became much better and useful when he got his Dokkan Awakening. Tech Angel Frieza stacked attack on Super, instead of stunning on Super like his global counterpart, and gained 100% attack and 80% defense on Super. Like, he was better than Cell, for sure, at the time, but he still wasn't anything crazy, and only really got useful once he got his Dokkan Awakening too. SR Tech Angel King Cold was an SR, so nothing mind-blowing, but he did debuff the attacked enemy's attack and defense by 25%, but his stats were just so low that it didn't even matter. Like, 2900 defense is just instant death in any event that mattered. On Global, I guess he was useful in some niche Super Strike events, but I'm pretty sure by the time he came to JP, he was just useless. The free-to-play Strength Angels percent Goku was alright for a free-to-play card. He had a decent free-to-play sub-leader skill for a Super Strength type, had a Supreme Damage Multiplier, which was extreme on Global, and 4 key as well as a great chance of gaining 80% attack and 40% defense at the start of turn. His stats were pretty low though, so like most free-to-play units, he wasn't that great in game. And also, is it just me, or is it kind of weird to see him as like a Strength type unit? Because on Global he's Int, so seeing him as a Strength type is just so weird. His drop rate was also and is still to this day one of the worst ones I've seen. I never farmed him on global. Like, I just got one copy and I think awakened him, but farming multiple copies of him, yeah, it was just not worth it. But a cool thing about his event though is that the last stage dropped weighted headgears, the best training items on global, on par with candy canes, so this was cool for sure. Now, was the banner worth it? Well, you were guaranteed one of the new units per multi for your first 3 discounted multis, but like I said, the cards weren't anything crazy. The best one was probably the Super Kaikan Goku, so I guess if you really wanted him, it was worth the discounted multis. Like, the banner already had LR Bardock unfeatured, so I'm sure some people summoned just for those unfeatured LRs. 10 days later, and it was time for another World Tournament, the 24th World Tournament, which came with some new cards and awakenings. Strength Gate Goku was alright, he had a Noki leader skill, a supreme damage multiplier, 80% attack and defense at the start of turn, and an additional 80% attack and 40% defense when facing multiple enemies. So yeah, on paper, he looked like a monster in SVR, gaining 160% attack and 100% defense at the start of turn, but he had fish play stats, so yeah, in game he was just okay. Physical Super Boo wasn't any better, he I guess lowered attack on Super, which was good, and gained 10% attack and defense per key spheres obtained, as well as 5000 HP, but his stats were also so low that he just wasn't all that. I did drop Kais on this guy though back then, because I needed Majin Buu Saga categorized to beat Int Ultimate Gohan's Easy, and from what I can remember, he was actually pretty okay there I guess. Not anything crazy, but he did his job as a filler unit. He also was okay in Battlefield thanks to his healing, but nothing insane too. As for the World Tournament reward card, he was pretty good. He greatly raised his attack on Super for run turn, gave Extreme Class allies 2k and 30% attack and defense, and debuffed Super Class enemies defense by 50%. He was Textile's easy best linking partner, sharing 4 links with him, while also supporting him. Like, this was a decent card. 3 days later, and they released the update 3.13.0, a pretty big update. It added so many things, like we were now able to sell more than 10 characters all at once.
We can also go to sell, and now we can actually go ahead and sell, I believe, up to 99 units at once. Some of these I do want to keep, so I'm going to be a little careful. Like Future Gohan, I don't need you. I just got done with a massive summoning stream. This is him. So you can just keep selling and selling and selling. As you guys can see, 23. And we can just have that shit go all the way up to 99.
Then they completely reworked the friend system. They added a filter option to it, something that didn't exist at the time. Like back then you had to scroll through the friend list to find the friend leader you wanted.
Let's go into Boss Rush. And then let's say we're going to try and bring up like a hybrid Saiyan leader, right? Let's say we want to use an Ultimate Gohan hybrid Saiyan team. So we can hit this little filter right here. So these are the typings, right? That's AGL, that's Tech, Int, STR, and Physical right there. So you could, sort of sort the friend units you'll find. And then let's say we want to find a hybrid Saiyan. I believe hybrid Saiyan is this one, right? No, that's Namekian, excuse me. Hybrid Saiyan is that one right there. So here it'll sort it and we will only see hybrid Saiyan units, right? Boom, there's an Ultimate Gohan. Okay.
They also increased the number of friends you could have to 100, which was good. You could also now select like your friend leader.
All right, so let me showcase or show how you do some of this new stuff. So if we head up here to team, we can see I'm running kind of a pure Saiyan team right here, and then up here I can actually choose who to put as my leader. So let's pretend the world tournament is going up. We'll go ahead and put LR Broly. So now any of the friends on my friends list, they're gonna see LR Broly up there. That'll be really cool for them.
I think before that update, if I remember it correctly, your friend leader was basically just the last leader you used in battle or something like that. Or maybe I just didn't even know where you could set your friend leader from. It's possible, but before that update, I never touched any friend leader thing. I never set my friend leader, so it's possible it just wasn't an option or I just didn't know where it was. But yeah, also in the old system, I remember that you could just reroll the friend list infinitely until you found the leader you wanted. Unlike today when you have to enter the stage and then quit it to refresh your friend list. So an all-around pretty significant update. The month ended with a teaser of the next Dokkan Fest, and it looked like it was going to be a new Super Saiyan for Goku, which we'll cover in the next history video. But until then, take care. Peace.